Over the last month, Americans have been understandably distracted by Trump and his regime. Between them threatening to take away the Affordable Care Act and the possibility of them instigating World War III, as a nation, we've been pretty preoccupied. What most of us have not noticed during this time is the 7 people in the state of Arkansas who were scheduled to be executed. The United States is the only Western country that still uses the death penalty. We rank 5th in the most executions, just behind Iran, Saudi Arabia, North Korea, and China. Last month, Arkansas took capital punishment to a whole new level by attempting a controversial execution schedule that would have seen 8 inmates put to death by lethal injection over a 10-day period. Why the rush? The executions were scheduled in such rapid succession because the state's supply of controversial lethal injection drug expired at the end of April. You may wonder, why don't they just get more? Well, that's the thing, they can't. No one will sell it to them because they know it's being used for execution. I am here to tell you about a system you think you already know. It's called capital punishment. So please listen carefully because the truth is shocking. So to start out, the US states fall into 3 categories. States that don't have the death penalty at all, states that have the death penalty but they're on the books but they never carried them out, and states that pursue the death penalty and carry out the executions. These are the ones in red. Before we get back to Arkansas, let's take a look at some figures that have held true over time. Studies show that executions carried out since the early 1970s historically kill innocent people 4% of the time post-mortem. Overall, nearly 1 in 10 death row inmates ends up being exonerated eventually. To make matters worse, the death penalty is wrought with systematic racism. Black people who kill white people are sentenced to death more often than white people who kill black people. Another thing, did you know 1 out of every 10 who's been executed in the United States to date has had severe mental illness? Yes, we kill people with mental illness. I mean, that's sick. Another shocking fact is that we give the death penalty to people who've committed their crimes when they were teenagers. Did you know that since 1976, 22 teenagers were given the death penalty? Now, it's true, they weren't executed when they were teens. We waited patiently for them to come of age to do that. And finally, some states allow state-sanctioned murder of people whose IQ is as low as 70. They're developmentally disabled. They might not even have understood the crime. And there's one more thing to consider. It's the issue of botched executions. In other words, executions that have gone wrong, not because they killed the person, but 7% of all lethal executions, lethal injections, are a botched job. So, what about that Arkansas story I was going to tell you about? Well, it's going to be a quick one. Over the course of the last month in Arkansas, a man suffered a botched execution by lethal injection, during which he heaved and coughed and writhed in pain for 13 minutes before succumbing to the poison. Another man with an IQ of 70 was scheduled to be executed in Arkansas, but the execution was stopped in the 11th hour. 2 men scheduled for execution, despite the fact that there was DNA evidence that could exonerate them, but was never tested before, could have been executed. A man with paranoid schizophrenia was scheduled for execution, and in the 11th hour, he got a stay. So in the 11th hour, some of these people, just hours before their execution, were granted stays, and others were not. Is this how you envisioned capital punishment in the United States of America? I didn't.